The restaurant's soft lighting caught the single tear sliding down Emily Harper's cheek as the man across from her, Mark, with his perfectly pressed shirt and practiced smile, leaned back in his chair and delivered the words that would echo in her mind for months. "I'm sorry, Emily," he said, voice low but not kind. "You seem nice, but you're just not what I expected. You're bigger than your photos made you look. I'm looking for someone who takes better care of themselves. I think we should call it a night." The words landed like punches. Emily sat frozen, her untouched salad wilting in front of her, while the hum of conversations around them suddenly felt deafening. She had spent hours getting ready, curling her dark hair, choosing the navy dress that hugged her curves in a way she'd hoped looked elegant rather than obvious, practicing smiles in the mirror. All of it, gone in one cruel sentence. She managed a nod, throat too tight to speak, and watched him stand, toss a 20 on the table, for his half, and walk out without looking back. That was when the dam broke. Emily pressed her napkin to her face, trying to hide the sobs that shook her shoulders. She was 28 years old, a kindergarten teacher who spent her days wiping tears and tying shoelaces, and tonight she felt smaller than any of her 5-year-olds. She didn't notice the man at the next table until a small voice piped up. "Daddy, why is that lady crying?" Emily lowered the napkin just enough to see a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with messy brown pigtails and wide hazel eyes, staring at her with open concern. Beside the girl sat a man, mid-30s, dark hair slightly tousled, wearing a simple gray sweater that stretched across broad shoulders. He had been quietly coloring with his daughter, but now his attention was fully on Emily. The man, Lucas Bennett, met Emily's eyes and offered a gentle, apologetic smile, as if to say, "Kids notice everything." "It's okay, sweetie," he murmured to his daughter, Sophie. Then, louder, to Emily, "I'm sorry if we're intruding." Emily tried to pull herself together, wiping her eyes quickly. "No, it's fine. I'm fine." But she wasn't, and everyone at the two tables knew it. Sophie tugged her father's sleeve. "Daddy, she's sad. We should give her a cookie. Cookies make everything better." Lucas glanced at the untouched chocolate chip cookie on Sophie's plate. The restaurant had brought complimentary desserts for kids, and then back at Emily. Something in her expression, the raw hurt still shining in her green eyes, made him act on impulse. He picked up the cookie, wrapped it carefully in a napkin, and stood. Sophie hopped down from her booster seat and followed him the 3 steps to Emily's table. "Hi," Lucas said softly, holding out the cookie like a peace offering. "My daughter thinks this might help. And honestly, she's usually right about these things." Emily stared at the cookie, then at the little girl beaming up at her, then at the man whose eyes held no judgment, only quiet empathy. She took the cookie with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. Sophie climbed onto the empty chair Mark had vacated, the audacity of a 6-year-old knowing no bounds, and patted Emily's hand. "My name's Sophie. What's yours?" "Emily," she managed, voice thick. "That's a pretty name. You have pretty hair too. It's all curly like a princess." Emily let out a watery laugh, the first genuine one in weeks. "Thank you, Sophie." Lucas lingered, unsure whether to return to his table or stay. Something about Emily, the way she was trying so hard to be brave in front of a child, pulled at him. "Would you like some company?" he asked. "We're just finishing up, but if you'd rather be alone." "No," Emily said quickly. "Please, stay." And so they did. Sophie chattered about school, about how she'd drawn a unicorn that day, about how her goldfish had died last month and her daddy let her have a funeral in the backyard. Lucas listened with fond amusement, occasionally adding quiet commentary, but mostly he watched Emily. Slowly, the sharp edges of humiliation began to dull. Emily found herself smiling at Sophie's stories, even laughing when the little girl demonstrated her best unicorn gallop right there in the restaurant aisle. When the server came with the check, Lucas signed it quickly. Sophie yawned, rubbing her eyes. "We should head home," Lucas said reluctantly. "Early bedtime for this one." Emily felt an unexpected pang of loss. For the first time in hours, she hadn't felt like the rejected fat girl at the table. She'd felt seen. "Thank you," she said again, this time looking directly at Lucas. "Both of you turned a really awful night into something bearable." Lucas hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "Would it be too forward to ask for your number? In case Sophie wants to know if the cookie helped." Sophie nodded vigorously. "I need to know." Emily laughed, typed her number into his phone, and handed it back. As they left, Sophie waved enthusiastically. "Bye, Princess Emily." Emily watched them go, the restaurant suddenly feeling too quiet again. But her phone buzzed before she'd even paid her own bill. Unknown number. This is Lucas. Just wanted to make sure you got home safe tonight. No pressure to reply. Just, take care of yourself, okay? She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, I will. Thank you again. Tonight meant more than you know. And that might have been the end of it, a kind gesture from a stranger on a terrible night. But it wasn't. 3 days later, Emily was at the park with her kindergarten class on a field trip when she spotted them, Sophie on the swings, Lucas pushing her gently. Sophie saw her first. Princess Emily, she shrieked, leaping off the swing mid-arc. Lucas caught her before disaster struck and sprinting across the wood chips. Emily crouched down as Sophie barreled into her for a hug. What are you doing here? Sophie demanded. I work at the school over there, Emily said, pointing. These are my students. Sophie immediately began introducing herself to every child within earshot, and within minutes she was organizing a game of tag. Lucas approached more slowly, hands in his pockets. Fancy running into you. Emily smiled, really smiled. Hi. They ended up spending the entire recess together. Lucas helped corral excited 5-year-olds, Emily pushed Sophie on the swings, and by the time the whistle blew for her class to line up, Sophie was begging her dad for a playdate. That weekend, Emily found herself at a local children's museum with Lucas and Sophie. Then a picnic the next weekend. Then helping Sophie with her Halloween costume in October. Then baking Christmas cookies in December. It happened slowly, naturally, the way good things sometimes do when you're not looking for them. Lucas learned that Emily had grown up in a house where her weight was always a topic of conversation. Her mother, well-meaning but misguided, had put her on diets starting at age 10. Her father had made jokes that weren't jokes. She'd spent her life feeling like an apology for taking up space. Emily learned that Lucas's wife, Sophie's mother, had died in a car accident 3 years earlier. He'd been raising Sophie alone, working as a freelance graphic designer so he could be home when she got off the school bus. He'd dated a few times, but nothing serious. Sophie always came first. They talked about everything. Emily confessed how Mark's rejection had reopened old wounds, how she sometimes still heard his voice in her head when she looked in the mirror. Lucas told her about the guilt he carried, about how he sometimes felt he was failing Sophie by not giving her a mother. But mostly, they just lived. Emily became a regular fixture in their lives. She was there for Sophie's first lost tooth, for her school play where she played a tree, the most important tree, Sophie insisted, for the night Sophie had nightmares and only wanted Miss Emily to read her back to sleep. And slowly, so slowly Emily almost didn't notice, Lucas began looking at her differently. It was in the way he'd brush her hair back from her face when she was helping Sophie with homework. In how he'd bring her favorite tea when she stayed late to help with art projects. In the way his eyes lingered when she laughed. But Emily didn't see it. She'd convinced herself that a man like Lucas, kind, handsome, devoted, would never want someone like her. She was the friend, the helper, the safe person who adored his daughter and would never complicate things. The realization came on a cold February evening. Sophie had been invited to a birthday sleepover, her first ever. Lucas had been nervous about letting her go, but Emily had convinced him it would be good for her. So they found themselves with an entire Saturday night free, something that hadn't happened in years for Lucas. He invited Emily over for dinner. Just us, he said, and there was something in his voice that made her stomach flip. She arrived in her favorite green sweater, the one that made her eyes look brighter, carrying a bottle of wine and fresh flowers for the table. They cooked together, pasta with homemade sauce, garlic bread, salad. Sophie FaceTimed midway through to show them her sleeping bag setup and demand goodnight kisses through the phone. After dinner, they settled on the couch with the promised movie, an old romantic comedy Emily loved. Halfway through, Lucas muted the TV. He said quietly. She turned to him, heart suddenly pounding. I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. She nodded, barely breathing. I've been trying to find the right way to say this for months. I'm in love with you. Not as Sophie's favorite teacher, or as my friend who helps with everything. I'm in love with you, Emily Harper, exactly as you are. Your laugh, your kindness, your curves, your everything. I love the way you light up when you talk about your students. I love how you sing off-key to Disney songs with Sophie. I love how strong you are, even when you don't feel it. Tears filled Emily's eyes. I've been terrified to say anything because I didn't want to risk losing you. You and Sophie, you're my whole world. But I can't keep pretending this is just friendship. Not when I want to kiss you every time you walk into a room. Emily stared at him, emotions crashing over her in waves. But, Lucas, I'm perfect, he finished firmly. You're perfect for me, for us. He reached out, cupping her face gently, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their first kiss was soft, tentative, then deepening as months of unspoken longing poured out between them. Later, lying tangled together on the couch, Emily whispered against his chest, I was so sure you could never want someone like me. Lucas pulled back to look at her seriously. Someone like you, someone who makes my daughter light up like the sun. Someone who makes me feel like I can breathe again after 3 years of just surviving. Emily, you're not someone like you. You're you, and you're everything. They took things slowly, for Sophie's sake. When they finally told her that Daddy loved Miss Emily and wanted her to be part of their family forever, Sophie's reaction was pure 6-year-old joy. Does this mean Miss Emily gets to live here? And read me bedtime stories every night, and we can have pancakes every Sunday? Lucas laughed through happy tears. Yes, baby, all of that. The wedding was small, held in the backyard where Sophie had once buried her goldfish. Emily wore a simple lace dress that hugged her curves beautifully. Sophie was the flower girl, scattering petals with enthusiastic abandon. As they exchanged vows, Lucas promised to love her in sickness and health, in good times and bad, and especially on the days when you doubt yourself, because I will spend every one of those days reminding you how extraordinary you are. Emily promised to love him and Sophie with everything she had, and to keep bringing cookies when days are hard, because a very wise little girl once taught me that sometimes that's exactly what you need. Years later, when people asked how they met, Emily would smile and say, I had the worst blind date of my life. And then a little girl gave me a cookie. But the real story, the one she told Sophie when she was old enough to understand, was about learning that your worth isn't measured by cruel words from strangers, or by dress sizes, or by old wounds that never quite healed. It's measured by the love you give, and the love you allow yourself to receive. And sometimes, that love walks over from the next table, carrying a chocolate chip cookie and a future you never dared to dream of.